The first chill of the late autumn afternoon was not merely in the air, thick with the scent of wood smoke and decaying leaves. It was in the very paper Detective Jack Thorne held in his hand, 3 days before the Northwood Community Center's annual Autumn Harvest Festival. A certified letter had arrived at the precinct addressed not to the General Police Department, nor even to his unit, but with chilling specificity, Detective Jack Thorne Homicide Division Cold Case Unit. The return address bore the name Meredith Blackwood, a name that in the manicured, ostensibly tranquil enclave of Northwood had become synonymous with iron-willed adherence to the HOA's covenants conditions and restrictions CC&Rs, and a thinly veiled disdain for anything or anyone that deviated from her pristine vision of community perfection. Jack, a man more accustomed to sifting through the cold ashes of forgotten tragedies, felt an uncharacteristic prickle of unease. Meredith Blackwood was a known quantity, a relentless issuer of complaints about everything from improperly stored recycling bins to the aesthetic blight of unapproved garden gnomes. But a direct formal letter to him at his professional address. This felt like an escalation, a deliberate crossing of a line. Detective Thorne. The letter began the Times' New Roman font, as sterile and unyielding as its author's worldview. It has come to the attention of the Northwood Homeowners Association's Architectural Review and Community Standards Committee, of which I serve as chair, that your continued personal association with and implicit endorsement of the specialized children's program currently operating at the Northwood Community Center presents a significant and frankly troubling conflict of interest. The program, as you are no doubt aware from my previous, and I must note, largely unheeded communications to the center's administrative staff consistently generates excessive and disruptive levels of noise, disproportionately utilizes community resources, and, to be blunt, palpably detracts from the aesthetic harmony and ambient tranquility that Northwood residents pay a considerable premium to enjoy. Jack's jaw tightened. Aesthetic harmony. His 10-year-old daughter, Lily, the radiant, indomitable center of his universe, attended that program. Lily, born with a rare genetic condition affecting her mobility, navigated the world with crutches or a lightweight wheelchair. Her spirit, a defiant wildflower pushing through concrete. To Meredith, Lily and her classmates were apparently an unacceptable disruption to this harmony. The letter continued a litany of grievances, persistent presence of various adaptive equipment often left haphazardly, an undeniable eyesore, audible expressions, the shouts, the occasionally uncontrolled vocalizations of these particular children. We have, I assure you, received numerous complaints. It went on to formally request that Jack use his considerable influence to encourage the swift relocation of this program to a more specialized, perhaps private, and certainly more discreet facility. The veiled threat was clear failure to meaningfully address these legitimate and pressing concerns. Will regrettably compel the committee to explore all available avenues, including formal injunctions and a public airing of these grievances. We trust, Detective Thorne, that you will discern the inherent wisdom in our position. Sincerely, Meredith Blackwood, Chair, RCSC. Jack had crumpled the letter, a cold fury coiling in his gut. He'd smoothed it out later, placing it in a new file, Blackwood M, Community Center Dispute. It felt less like a petty HOA squabble, and more like a warning shot. The scent of wood smoke that usually signaled cozy evenings now seemed acrid, the decaying leaves a metaphor for something rotten in Northwood's core. The day of the Autumn Harvest Festival dawned crisp and bright, the air alive with the happy sounds of rustling leaves underfoot, and the distant, excited chatter of children. For Jack, however, the underlying chill of Meredith's letter lingered a dissonant note in the festive symphony, Lily was ecstatic her class participating in a much-anticipated scavenger hunt that would take them all over the sprawling community center and its grounds. Meredith Blackwood predictably was present, her silver bob immaculate, her posture ramrod straight, her gaze sweeping over the joyful chaos like a hawk assessing prey. But her usual overt critical demeanor was unsettlingly replaced by an elaborate performance of civic benevolence. Jack arriving a little early to drop off extra snacks Lily had insisted on for her friends, witnessed it firsthand. Meredith, with a saccharine smile that didn't quite reach her cold, assessing blue eyes, was personally bestowing homemade oatmeal cookies from an elegant wicker basket upon the children. "And for you, dear Lily," she'd cooed, executing a stiff, awkward kneel as Lily approached with her brightly decorated crutches. "Such a brave, sweet girl, enjoy the festival treats." Lily, ever polite, though her eyes flickered with a child's intuitive uncertainty, had thanked her quietly. Eleanor Albright, Lily's wonderfully compassionate and perceptive teacher, caught Jack's eye over the heads of the children and gave a subtle, almost imperceptible roll of her eyes. Later, when Meredith was momentarily out of earshot, Eleanor murmured to Jack, her voice tight with long-held resentment. "She was at that dreadful HOA meeting last month. Jack, remember the one where she practically called our children a blight on the community? Said the center needed to be more discerning about its programs, and that families like ours might be better served by seeking more specialized private facilities elsewhere. I nearly lost it with her then. She has ice in her veins. That woman. This sudden sweetness is more alarming than her usual vinegar." "I remember Eleanor," Jack said, his own voice grim. "Every damn word. Agnes Gable, a sharp-witted retiree with a twinkle in her eye, and a garden that was the envy of Northwood, lived directly adjacent to the community center and volunteered frequently. Keeps me young, Jack," she'd often say, "and it lets me keep an eye on that Blackwood woman and her petty tyrannies." Agnes found Jack near the cider press, her expression one of profound skepticism. "Saw her late last night, Jack, well after 11. Poking around the back of the kitchen near that old meat locker they hardly ever use. Had a little flashlight when I called down from my window to ask if she was all right. She jumped a mile. Said she was checking for vermin activity near the dumpsters. Sounded like a load of hogwash to me. Looked more like she was casing the joint, if you ask me, or checking if something still worked." This Jack filed away with a growing, chilling disquiet. The meat locker was an anachronism, a large walk-in unit from a time the center had perhaps harbored grander culinary ambitions. Now it was primarily used for storing bulk, non-perishable supplies and seasonal decorations. Its heavy insulated door was usually kept firmly shut, though, as Jack would soon learn to his profound and everlasting horror, not always securely locked. Later, as the festival was in full joyous swing, the air filled with the mingled scents of popcorn caramel apples and fallen leaves, Meredith approached Lily's scavenger hunt group. The team consisted of Lily Young, Thomas Peterson, who was autistic and non-verbal, but communicated with surprising eloquence using a specialized tablet, Maria Sanchez, who navigated with a bright pink walker adorned with unicorn stickers, and the inseparable giggling Carter twins, Sam and Ben, both with Down syndrome, and an infectious love for silly jokes. They were all under the watchful, affectionate eye of parent volunteer Mrs. Susan Davies, a kind, gentle woman whose own son had graduated from the program the previous year. "Oh, my dears, are you looking for the clue near the old kitchen?" Meredith asked, her voice oozing a cloying, unnatural helpfulness that immediately put Mrs. Davies on alert. "I believe it's a rather clever riddle. Something about a cold heart in a dark room. I just happened to overhear Mrs. Henderson, the kitchen coordinator. You know, Martha mentioning she'd tucked it away back there. It can be a bit tricky to find that particular service corridor if you don't know the way. Come along, children, I'll show you a little shortcut. It'll be our secret." She even winked a grotesque contortion of her usually severe features. She then gestured them down a less-used, dimly lit service corridor leading past the main kitchen. This, Jack Thorne would later realize, with a cold, sickening lurch of his heart, was the precise moment the wolf cloaked in the most unconvincing sheep's clothing led the unsuspecting lambs to the slaughter. Jack was at the precinct, his mind lost in the labyrinthine details of a decade-old cold case, a young artist who had vanished, leaving only a studio full of haunting, unfinished canvases. When Eleanor Albright's frantic, breathless call came through, "Jack, it's Eleanor! Oh God, Jack, Lily's group. They're missing." His blood ran cold, a freezing tide that stole his breath. Missing how, Eleanor? What happened? The scavenger hunt. They were supposed to check in at the main hall checkpoint 10 minutes ago, Meredith Blackwood. She offered to show them a shortcut to the kitchen area. For a clue, Mrs. Davies was with them. Jack, I saw Meredith come back from that service corridor alone quite a while ago, maybe 20 minutes. She seemed flustered, but she just said the children were fine, just taking their time with Mrs. Davies, and that she had an urgent HOA matter she'd forgotten about. I didn't think... Oh God, Jack, Meredith. The threatening letter, the out-of-character cookies, Agnes's disturbing sighting, the kitchen, the old meat locker. It all coalesced in Jack's mind with horrifying, sickening speed, forming a coherent, terrifying narrative. How many are missing, Eleanor? He managed his voice a strained whisper. 5 children, Jack, Lily, Thomas, Maria, and the Carter twins, Sam and Ben and Mrs. Davies, their chaperone. She's missing too. Call 911 immediately, report them missing. Lock down the entire community center. No one in or out. Is Meredith Blackwood still there? Yes, Jack, believe it or not, she's in the director's office right now, lodging a formal complaint about the appalling lack of supervision during the festival, the sheer unmitigated audacity of it. Keep her there, Eleanor. Do not let her leave that building. Tell the first officer on scene she is a material witness, possibly more. I'm on my way. 10 minutes. The drive to Northwood was a siren-fueled blur of controlled recklessness, his police radio crackling with updates that only deepened his dread. He arrived to a scene of barely controlled chaos. Anxious parents were beginning to gather, their faces etched with fear, their hushed whispers like the rustling of dry leaves. Uniformed officers were trying to establish order. He found Eleanor near the main hall, her face pale, her hands trembling. Meredith took them towards the kitchen, Jack. She said she was helping them. The meat locker. His voice was sharp-cutting. Has anyone checked the old walk-in meat locker off that corridor? Eleanor's eyes widened in dawning, abject horror. Oh dear God, no, it's always kept shut. We just assumed... Jack didn't wait. He sprinted Sergeant Jim Riley, his steadfast friend and colleague who'd arrived just moments before, close on his heels. Riley, a father of 2 young girls himself, knew Lily. He'd even helped her master a 2-wheeler at a police charity bike rodeo last summer. His face was a mask of grim concern. The kitchen with its cheerful harvest decorations now seemed a grotesque mockery. At the far end, almost hidden behind a stack of catering trolleys, was the heavy industrial door of the meat locker. It was closed ominously. He reached for the heavy latch bar. It was firmly engaged in its hasp. He pulled. It moved. Not padlocked, just latched. His eyes, trained to notice every detail, registered a single worn tan leather work glove lying on the concrete floor just beside the doorframe, as if dropped in haste. Lily! He roared, his voice cracking with a primal terror he'd never known as he wrenched the heavy insulated door open, a blast of frigid, stale air carrying the faint metallic scent of old, cold storage hit him. The interior was plunged into an oppressive Stygian darkness. The single bare bulb overhead was either burned out or, more chillingly, had been switched off from the outside. Then a whimper. His flashlight beam sliced through the blackness, illuminating a scene that would be seared into his memory for eternity. Huddled together in the far corner on the cold, metal-grated floor were the 5 children and Mrs. Davies. They were pale, their small bodies racked with uncontrollable shivering, their faces tinged with a terrifying blue-gray color. Lily, his precious Lily, was wrapped in Mrs. Davies' thin cardigan, her eyes huge and dark, in her small pinched face, wide with a mixture of profound terror and a dawning, desperate, almost unbelieving hope. As she saw him, Thomas Peterson was rocking back and forth rhythmically, making small, distressed keening sounds. The Carter twins were crying silently, tears freezing into icy tracks on their pale cheeks. Mrs. Davies, clearly trying to shield the children with her own body, looked to be on the verge of collapse, her lips a horrifying shade of cyanotic blue. "Oh, dear God," Jack breathed the flashlight, shaking his heart a block of ice in his chest. He lunged into the locker, the sudden intense cold biting into his skin. "Lily, everyone, it's okay, I'm here, we're getting you out." The temperature inside the locker was dangerously low, well below freezing. This wasn't just children getting accidentally locked in. The external light switch was in the off position. The heavy door had been firmly latched. This was deliberate. This was malicious. This was attempted murder. As he began to gently help the children, Mrs. Davies, barely able to speak, her teeth, chattering so violently, tried to explain her words, slurred and fragmented. "The door, it slammed shut. Couldn't open it from inside. The light, it just went out. She was humming some sort of strange tune. Then she said something, I think. She whispered. They remind me of my own little girl, my Melinda, the one I couldn't save, the one who was always so cold. Now they'll all know what cold truly is. So cold, so terribly cold." Her voice trailed off into a series of gasping shivers. Riley, appearing in the doorway, swore under his breath. "Jesus, Jack! What kind of monster?" His eyes fell on the glove on the floor outside. "Whose glove is that? Could someone else?" Other officers, alerted by Jack's shouts, were now rushing into the kitchen. Paramedics were summoned, as Jack carried Lily, her small, terrifyingly cold body, clinging to him, out of that frigid hell. His gaze, burning with cold fury, fell upon Meredith Blackwood. She was standing near the entrance to the kitchen, having been drawn by the commotion, observing the frantic rescue, her face, an unreadable mask. But as their eyes met, Jack saw it, a fleeting, almost imperceptible flicker of something cold, calculating and chillingly triumphant in her gaze, before it was quickly veiled by an expression of perfectly feigned concern. In that instant, Jack Thorne knew. The immediate aftermath was a maelstrom of urgent medical intervention and burgeoning police investigation. Lily, Thomas, Maria, the Carter twins, and the heroic Mrs. Davies were all exhibiting clear signs of moderate to severe hypothermia. They were rushed to trauma centers. Jack, after entrusting Lily to the paramedics, forced himself to compartmentalize. The meat locker was now a primary crime scene. "Riley," he barked, "this entire kitchen area, and especially that freezer, is to be sealed off, full forensic team. Here, Stat, I want that door, the latch mechanism, the interior, every damn inch of it, processed for prints, fibers, DNA, anything. Check the external light switch for prints. And I want a detailed temperature log from inside that locker, and that glove. Bag it, process it. Find out who it belongs to. Carl Jenkins, the night janitor. He's often careless with his things." Jack's mind briefly latched onto the janitor. Was it possible? A disgruntled employee. But the cold precision. Meredith's presence, his gut screamed her name, no accident. "Jim." Jack stated, his voice like chipped flint. That door was deliberately latched, the light deliberately switched off. Given the vulnerability of those kids, this is attempted murder. Multiple counts. I want Mrs. Meredith Blackwood detained for questioning. Now read her rights, but bring her downtown. She was here, she had opportunity, and she has a well-documented history of animosity. And Mrs. Davies heard her. Jim heard her talk about her dead daughter. Riley nodded, his face grim. I'll have Officers Miller and Chen handle her discreetly but firmly. As his directives were carried out, Jack stepped back into the frigid maw of the meat locker. His mind, the cold case investigators, was already at work. The door heavy, the external latch robust. The internal safety release, a glow-in-the-dark push bar, was present but high up. He noticed faint scuff marks on the floor, and a small, almost invisible piece of dark blue fiber snagged on a rough edge of the metal doorframe just near the latch. It could be nothing. It could be everything. The forensic team arrived, led by Dr. Alistair Finch, the department's chief forensic chemist. Temperature readings first, Finch instructed. Then a full sweep for latents on all accessible surfaces of the door, both interior and exterior, paying particular attention to the latch light switch and that internal release bar. After that, a fiber and trace evidence vacuum sweep. Jack needed to speak with Mrs. Davies as soon as she was stable. Her account would be crucial. His phone buzzed. Lily's core temperature was slowly rising. The other children and Mrs. Davies were also stable, though all suffering significant exposure. The relief was immense, quickly followed by a renewed surge of cold fury. At the ad hoc command post, Riley updated him. Meredith Blackwood is on her way downtown. Put up a hell of a fuss. Standard Karen playbook clammed up once Miranda was read. Good, Jack said. Witnesses. Still canvassing, Mrs. Henderson, kitchen volunteer, saw Meredith near the service corridor by the locker, about an hour before the kids went missing. Said Meredith was inspecting. It asked if the thermostat worked. Odd, she thought. Inspecting or reconnoitering? Jack's eyes narrowed. Get a detailed statement. Agnes Gable, the neighbor, confirmed seeing Blackwood messing with the external refrigeration unit for the locker. Late last night, Blackwood claimed she was checking for rats. The hours crawled. Jack divided his time between the command post and the hospital, holding Lily's small, cold hand, the image of her blue and shivering, a torment. Late that evening, the first significant forensic breakthrough came. Dr. Finch called Jack. Jack, we've got something from the meat locker door. One print on the underside of the latch bar is remarkably clear. Partial right thumbprint. Ran it through APHIS, no hits. But then, per your request, we got an elimination print from Meredith Blackwood when she was processed. It's a perfect match. Position suggests a pulling or leveraging motion consistent with forcefully closing or ensuring the latch was fully engaged. Jack closed his eyes. A silent, grim satisfaction. And the fiber. Dark blue cashmere wool, blend high-quality specific indigo dye. We collected fiber samples from Meredith Blackwood's jacket. Visually, Jack, they're identical. Labs running full comparison now. And the internal release bar, Alistair. Functional, but we found faint pry marks around the housing, almost invisible, like someone tried to jam it with a thin tool, a small screwdriver perhaps, but wasn't entirely successful. The glove from the scene. Standard work glove. Some generic DNA, nothing to tie it to anyone specific. Yet, we're checking with Carl Jenkins, the night janitor, see if it's his. And the thermostat. Jack asked, his voice hoarse. Manually set to its lowest possible temperature. Jack minus 18 degrees Celsius deliberate. Meredith hadn't just locked them in, she had turned it into a lethal deep freeze. The janitor Carl Jenkins was soon cleared. He'd been at his second job across town with multiple witnesses. The glove was indeed his. He confirmed he'd lost it near the locker weeks ago and hadn't bothered to replace it. It seemed Meredith had found it, and in a moment of twisted cunning decided to use it as a potential red herring. The interrogation room at police headquarters was stark, Meredith Blackwood, her expensive jacket bagged as evidence, sat wrapped in a police blanket. Detectives Sarah Chen and Mark O'Malley conducted the interview with Jack Ada Ben Carter and Riley. Observing Chen began, her voice calm. "Mrs. Blackwood, a very serious incident occurred. 6 people. 5 of them. Vulnerable children were found locked inside a freezing meat storage locker. We believe they were deliberately locked in." Meredith sniffed. "A tragic accident, I'm sure faulty equipment or poor supervision. Nothing to do with me." "An observer seen by Mrs. Henderson loitering near that locker an hour before they went missing." O'Malley interjected, "An area you had no official business being in." Meredith's eyes flashed. "I was ensuring all areas were secure. That corridor is often cluttered." "Inspecting the latch, perhaps?" Chen asked softly. "Because our team found your right thumbprint on the underside of that latch, consistent with forcefully ensuring it was engaged." A tremor ran through Meredith. "Preposterous. My print might be there from weeks ago." "Yet the print was fresh," O'Malley pressed. "And a dark blue cashmere wool fiber identical to your jacket was snagged on the door frame. Can you explain that Mrs. Blackwood?" Meredith's face was deathly pale. Her public defender, a young man named Peterson, whispered urgently. "Perhaps then." Chen continued, her voice gentle but steely. "You can explain the deleted files from your home computer, the center's schedule highlighting the special needs program's festival times, your internet browser, history, walk-in freezer temperatures, effects of hypothermia on children, how to disable internal freezer door release, and most tellingly, Mrs. Blackwood legal definition of gross negligence versus premeditated endangerment. We also found searches relating to lost child grief support groups and the obituary of a 7-year-old girl, Melinda Blackwood, who died 15 years ago from complications of cystic fibrosis. This was the final blow. Meredith's composure shattered. A strangled sob escaped her. "They were an eyesore," she whispered venomously. "Those children always needing something extra, lowering our property values. I tried to get the HOA to relocate them. They called me intolerant." Her voice rose. "I just wanted them to go away. I thought if they had a bad experience, if it was too cold, maybe their parents would take them somewhere else. I didn't mean for them to nearly die. I set the thermostat lower that morning, made sure the door was properly closed. I even found that janitor's old glove a while back. I thought, if I left it... No, I thought they'd be found quickly, just uncomfortably cold." Her confession. A chilling blend of self-pity, twisted justification, and admitted cruelty hung in the air. HOA Carter shook his head. "She's buried herself, Jack. Attempted murder, clear as day, premeditated." Jack said nothing, just stared at the woman who had nearly stolen his daughter's life. Meredith Blackwood was arrested, charged. Bail denied. The HOA freezer mom horrified the nation. The trial was harrowing. Ada Carter presented the overwhelming forensic and digital evidence. Mrs. Davies, Eleanor, and Agnes gave powerful testimonies. Medical experts detailed the life-threatening hypothermia and long-term trauma. Lily Thorne, pale but resolute, told the court about the cold, about being scared, how Mrs. Davies sang songs until her voice grew weak. Meredith's defense attorney argued diminished capacity, citing obsessive-compulsive personality disorder and unresolved grief over her daughter Melinda's death. But Meredith, taking the stand against counsel's advice, was her own worst enemy. Her testimony was a rambling, self-pitying diatribe, devoid of remorse, full of resentment. Her arrogance horrified the jury. The guilty verdict on all counts came in under 2 hours. At sentencing, Judge Ramirez's condemnation was scathing. "Mrs. Blackwood, your actions represent a level of premeditated cruelty and depraved indifference almost beyond comprehension. You targeted the most vulnerable for no reason other than your warped sensibilities and hateful prejudices. He sentenced her to life imprisonment without parole, ordering forfeiture of all assets to establish a restitution trust for the children. Meredith Blackwood slumped, finally broken. Jack Thorne held Lily's hand, tears of fierce relief flowing. Justice severe and fitting was rendered. The monster was caged. In the quiet weeks that followed, Lily began the slow journey of healing. The nightmares were frequent. Her fear of closed spaces, intense. Therapy was helping, but the scars ran deep. Jack, too, wrestled with his own demons. He sat one night, a pen in hand, wondering if he could ever articulate the complex horror of it all. He started a letter not to Meredith, for what could he say to such a void, but to Lily for her to read much later. A letter about courage in the face of darkness, about the enduring strength of love, and about the unyielding fight for justice that had saved her. There had been whispers in the department about his personal involvement. Riley, ever loyal, had been his staunchest defender. Jack's a good cop, a great father. He saw what needed to be seen because it was personal. He saved those kids. The successful prosecution had silenced most critics. The community of Northwood, chastened and forever changed, rallied around the affected families. The HOA was restructured. Its focus shifted towards genuine community. The specialized program at the center received an outpouring of support, a defiant stand against the hatred that had threatened it. The biting chill of that autumn afternoon would never be forgotten. But as winter eventually gave way to the tentative warmth of spring, so too did hope begin to blossom again in Northwood, a fragile but resilient wildflower pushing through the hardest ground.